Across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts and YouTube, this is Talking Science with Dr. Brad Tucker and Matt Miller.
OneWeb, SpaceX's competitor for satellite internet, they've launched 34 satellites and they want to launch 640 in total by next year.
Yeah, as you said, it's similar to SpaceX's Starlink and just shows Starlink is not the only game in town and not the only game actually taking action. Now, OneWeb is designed to go a bit higher in orbit. They're going to go about 1,200 kilometers, where Starlink is going, I think, in the 500 to 600 range. So by OneWeb going a bit higher, they think they only need 640 satellites to cover every part of the Earth, and they think they can get them all up there by 2021 when they can start this full service.
And how is this going to work? Is it just going to be like a normal internet service provider that you can choose from, like we can here in Australia, or is it going to be a little bit more involved than that?
Well, no, I think that's literally probably what it's going to be. If you think about your mobile phones, you sign onto a plan and you're reliant on their towers, right? You know, everyone competes about how many towers they have in coverage. Same thing about what's going to happen in space. You want to compete about both bandwidth, you know, how fast your data is and how reliable the coverage is. Now, in both cases, and it's not just these two groups, Amazon and others are looking at it, you know, they want global internet coverage. So I think the question is how reliable the network is, just as mobile phones, what the speeds are, and what the costs are. But it's not too naive to think in 5 years' time, instead of fighting over what mobile phone plan you have, it's fighting over what space internet plan you have, which will also be your internet, and you can make phone call, you know, and all those things. It's going to be a change. It's one of those changes I think that's going to happen this decade that most people didn't think about.
One thing that people are thinking about, the astronomers are thinking about the ramifications of this, and obviously there's another 640 satellites that are going to be they're in lower orbit than geostationary orbit, so these guys are going to be visible in some readings, aren't they? In some pictures and stuff.
Yeah, and this is becoming the trick. You know, I think projects like this are actually quite good in the sense that the satellites are cheaper, you can provide better coverage. It solves certain things, you know, not to play on it, but think about MH370 in this airplane that disappeared. It was because there was no satellite to track it and receive its signals. Those things go away, you know, and so there's huge practical ramifications for input on life. At the same time, though, you ruin your nighttime sky. And let's think about it this way. Let's think, you know, here in southern Australia, the nighttime at the summer solstice is just under 9 hours in terms of darkness. In the winter, it's closer to about 15 hours. Now, when you see satellite reflections, you see it a couple hours after sunset and before sunrise. That's when you're in the right angle for sunlight to bounce off the satellite and down to you. So in the summer, you actually shorten your nighttime when there's no interference from 9 hours to potentially 4 hours or even 3 hours. And so there's huge ramifications where you can wash out huge parts of the nighttime sky and you just see these satellites. And that's with your naked eye. With the bigger telescopes, you're more sensitive to light, and you're more sensitive to these reflective light effects. And so these images can just be destroyed. And so it's a real consequence that groups are working together on, trying to mitigate it and find what is the right balance so we don't ruin the nighttime sky, right? It would be kind of a shame if in 10 years we look up and we don't see stars, we just see swirling things above us.
Maybe the solution might be to put all the telescopes on the dark side of the moon. We're heading there anyway.
Well, look, yes, but, you know, hey, the dark side of the moon is good, but there are practical reasons why we just can't put everything in space or on the moon, both cost-wise, wavelength-wise, and not always works, you know, and reliability. And if we had infinite piles of money, potentially, but that's unfortunately not the reality. And we talk about things like James Webb, which runs $9 billion over budget. So it's not cheap or easy, you know, and I think this is the thing. It's easy when you have the same satellite and you just manufacture it, right? Think of a car, right? You design it once and then you just turn them out. Space telescopes are hard because they're all different. So it's not as easy as just turning them out.
Well, Starlink is trying to address the problem by painting satellites black to try and limit the amount of reflection. Are these sort of the things that can work, or is this just sort of pie in the sky sort of stuff?
Maybe. I think it depends on the coatings and the angles and that sort of thing, what they actually do. That they are trying and listening. The reason satellites aren't black, though, is the thermal issues. So, space is both hot and cold. People forget space is very hot when you're around the sun outside the Earth's atmosphere. So the reason they're coated gold and the color and the metallic colors they are is they reflect the heat away, so they keep the thermal, what we call thermal variations inside the thing, fine. If you've ever been in a really cold environment and your iPhone or your computer stops working on the battery because it's minus 20 degrees, now imagine space at minus 150 degrees. The temperatures are really tricky. So that's why no one's painted in black, because it just doesn't work. So if they can find a way of getting them dark and their satellites to work, that might be the solution. But that's one of the reasons why it just has never been done, because the satellite itself doesn't like the huge temperature ranges.